Welcome to The Resilient Recruiter. I am Mark Whitby, and my special guest today is Mike Brennan. Mike is the Group CEO of Norman Broadbent Group Plc, a leading professional services group listed on the London Stock Exchange. Mike joined Norman Broadbent as a turnaround CEO in 2016, and with his team, he's repositioned the group as a leading professional services firm focusing on talent acquisition and advisory services. These include board and leadership search, senior interim management, research and insight, solutions and leadership assessment. In 2018, the business posted its best annual revenues in over a decade, and in 2019 returned to profit. Mike has lived and built businesses in London, Hong Kong, Tokyo. He's also established and managed operations in New York, Dubai, and Singapore. Welcome, Mike. Thank you so much for being here.
Good to be here.
Fantastic. So you were referred by our mutual friend, Doug Bucci, who has also been on the podcast. So I'm grateful for the introduction from Doug. How do you know Doug Bucci?
So Doug and I go back to when I was 27, and we had a mutual business partner, and that kind of threw us together. And we became such close friends that he's actually godfather to my eldest son.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So that's a great place to start. I know you started your first business at age 27. Could you tell that story?
Yeah, sure. So I was working for a very, very well-regarded executive search business in the City of London. And it was great. I was well paid. I was doing well. But like a lot of search firms, it was quite sleepy. And I had lots of ideas and wanted to do lots of different things. They didn't. I was tapped on the shoulder by an investor, a guy called James Kahn, who is quite well known in the recruitment industry, and he's big on TV as well in Dragon's Den.
Of course.
So this was pre-fame, but so James basically put the money up to back me in my first recruitment venture. And we owned the business 50-50. And I set up what was the market's first mid-market executive search firm in the City of London. We grew it. I sold my stake in the business to James, and then I became quite a big shareholder in the Alexander Mann Group. And we grew the Alexander Mann Group. A few other partnerships that James had rolled in. And we then sold the business, half of the business, to Advent International, the big American private equity house, for what was at the time a whopping valuation. I then went out to Hong Kong, and I started the Asian business in Hong Kong, and grew it from there. So that's kind of how I got my feet wet in Asia, and really it was with James and then lastly in Asia where we were able to really start to innovate. And a lot of the lessons I learned from there have obviously I've brought through into my business now, but it also enabled me to work all over the world. So from Hong Kong, I helped drive and set up a business in Singapore. I then relocated to Tokyo, and I lived in Tokyo for a year, and I led our expansion in Tokyo, hired a team, and then came back to the UK, and I helped turn around the UK business, which we subsequently sold.
Amazing. I've actually got James Cahn's book, autobiography, on the shelf behind me. I've read it a couple of times, and I've given it to a few people as well. It's a fantastic story. And you mentioned lessons, and imagine, the industry has changed a lot since those days. What can you speak a little on innovation and why the executive search market needs to up its game?
Yeah, sure. So I remember having a conversation with a professor from the London Business School who had a particular interest in the executive search market. I don't know why, but he did. And I remember him telling me that there hasn't really been anything innovative happening in the executive search market since 1965. Okay, now I don't know. I was born in 1965. I don't think I'm that innovation, but I don't know what happened in 1965. But I'm a fan of search because I think it adds a lot of value, but also I'm a big critic of search because I don't think it's evolved and developed as much as it should have done. I think we should be taking the best possible parts of executive search, and then dropping some of the less effective aspects of it, or the unsatisfactory aspects of it, and trying to create something more around what I would call search solutions. So one of the things that I was able to do when I came into Norman Broadbent was I was able to take this wonderful 40-year heritage that Norman Broadbent's got and then mix it up a little bit. So why can't we have an interim assignment running alongside an executive search, for example? Why can't we build one single pricing structure for that? Why do all our clients make such ill-informed decisions when they're thinking about hiring? Okay, so why can't we put some research ahead of that so that the client can make a more informed decision before they even trigger a search? Okay, why can't we take all that wonderful insight and research that we uncover whilst we talk to all those candidates all day? Why can't we package that and present that back to the client as part of our overall offering? So basically what I'm saying is that search, I think traditional search has become very, very transactional. Okay. I think there's lots of pressures around the search market now. I think there are 6 or 7 different ways that a client can recruit before they even think about coming to a firm like Norman Broadbent. There's pricing pressures. And I also think that clients have been buying search not based on how they want to buy, but based on how the search industry wants to sell. All right. So what we've tried to do at Norman Broadbent is work with clients and help them make the right buying decisions. Okay. There's a frightening statistic. And that is that 37% of all executive search assignments fail. Okay.
Wow, now, I hadn't heard that figure before.
Yeah. There's a great organization called ESX, and they have these huge programs that run worldwide, and they interrogate corporate users of recruitment and search. And the last stat I saw said 37% of all searches fail in the UK, right? So if you think about the market in the UK is worth about £1.5 billion a year, that's 500 million, half a billion of wasted spend every year, okay, which is mind-numbing, okay? Then you've got on top of that, the other way of looking at it is, if 37% of all searches fail, that's like you going out buying a car at the weekend and there's almost a 1 in 2 chance it doesn't get you home. Okay? All right? If you look at it in that way. So, that's indefensible. And now at Norman Broadbent, we've got a 95% closure rate. Okay? And we've worked hard to see, how can we mitigate all the risk in the search process? And how can we make sure that there's a successful outcome? And, the innovations I touched on a little bit, they're just very common sense. So we do something called pre-search due diligence, which is a service which we offer to our clients. It almost guarantees success for the client. We look at the market. So does the client exist? Is the package right? Where will you get them from? Will they join your business? Okay, is your brand good enough? Okay, your EVP to get them over the line. Yeah, and is the job spec right? Is it compelling and interesting enough? And it's by doing those kind of basic things and working with clients that I think they're innovative, they're common sense, but they assure success.
Mike, can I challenge that in the following way. I don't think, I'm an advocate for the recruiting industry, obviously, and I don't think there's many of us who wake up in the morning and want to do a bad job, or who, want the search to fail, because of course, getting the completion fee requires the search to be successful. So, the vast majority of recruiters, I think, have the goal of this being successful, right? And sometimes the difficulty, of course, perhaps the recruiter's not being innovative enough. They're not, they're not offering that full range of services that you mentioned. However, quite often that could be because the client isn't really engaging with them fully, is not collaborating with them, is not truly partnering with them. And I can think of infinite number of examples where the client is the one who has scuppered the whole search because of something they did or didn't do it against the best advice of the recruiter. So how do we address that disconnect between the desire of the search firm to do the best job possible and the client who isn't always working in that collaborative mindset?
All right, so I get that, and I accept the fact that there will be instances where either the client forges ahead, okay, irrespective of the advice of the search company or consultant, or it could be that there's some kind of disconnect throughout the process. I get that. I mean, it happens, okay, but just as nobody wakes up in the morning wanting to do a good job in the recruitment industry, likewise, clients don't wake up in the morning and think, I'm going to mess this search up today, okay? Sure. But what we try and do is we try and nail it down right at the get-go, and we illustrate where those issues might be, okay, before we push ahead. But I think one of the big problems that we have within search, particularly the traditional search firms, the big search firms, is how they price. So there's very little incentive on them commercially to complete the work successfully. Now, obviously, we all want to do the best possible job. We want to build relationships and maintain those relationships. But if you've got a pricing structure where you get a fee on instruction, then you get some more fee 30 days later, whether you've delivered or not, and then you get the rest of the fee 30 days after that, whether you've delivered or not, where's the incentive? Okay, and if there's a slight rewriting of the spec at some point, then suddenly there's a restart fee. Okay, so we're very careful when it comes to pricing in Norman Broadbent. We are very focused on getting the balance right between what works for us commercially and delivering to the client. Otherwise, it becomes very unsatisfactory for the client. And our ethos is #client first. We always put the client first, and we will always try and do the best possible job. And we do walk away from searches if we don't think we can deliver.
Great. That makes total sense. And I feel like there has been an increasing level of dissatisfaction and perhaps cynicism among clients towards our industry. And perhaps that's caused this sort of almost adversarial relationship where it's not, there's conflict almost baked into it. What do you think we need to do to be more relevant as partners to our clients? Okay,
so I think that you used a great word there, relevant. Okay, so and this then ties into innovation. So rather than always doing things the way that we've always done them, we need to again go back to this concept of helping clients buy correctly and making sure they understand what their buying options are. And that means being much more solutions orientated. So we have developed a very strong culture, and part of that is that we're not a recruiting company. We are a professional services business, and we provide 5 very distinct service lines to our clients, and they can buy those service lines individually or they can package them up. And I think this is why we've managed to iron out some of the frustrations that exist between recruiter and client, because rather than walking in there and being a one-trick pony and force feeding them whatever it might be, a search, instead we can work our way through an issue with a client, and we might suggest a different approach. And because we've got 5 tools in our toolkit, that makes us much more agile, and it helps deliver a solution to the client. So I'll give you one example. We did a piece of work for a huge retailer. They were going through a lot of pain. This is pre-COVID. So bricks and mortar retailer, and they couldn't raise equity in the public markets. They had to raise debt. The CEO was rethinking his whole strategy, and he believed part of that was to build a completely new commercial function. And he talked us through his ideas, and our team questioned whether they were right. And what we suggested to him was that he should do a piece of research before he commissioned this new piece of work. So we looked at the bench strength of his competitors. We looked at the job spec which he himself had designed as to whether that candidate existed. We looked at whether his ideas in terms of structure was replicated elsewhere in the market. And we produced this piece of research, presented it back to him, and he came back and he said, and what we said in the research was, this structure doesn't work. This structure isn't anywhere else in the market. We don't think the candidate exists. And you'd be breaking new ground. Brackets, which is not a smart thing to do when you are where you are, close brackets. He came back to us after the weekend and said, you're right, I don't need a new commercial function. I need somebody that does this. So I think that's a great example of where a recruiter can add real value to a client, stops them making an expensive and embarrassing mistake, doesn't waste time, saves money, gets a better outcome. And our industry, I'm a huge advocate for our industry, but I just think we can do much more if we think more creatively and innovatively.
I love that, Mike, because if you only have one thing to sell, then you're going to try and apply that to pretty much every situation. And if the client says, well, I think I need this, then the incentive or the inclination is to say, okay, great. We'll take that mandate and we'll go and get started on that. And, by the way, there's their deposit and, to get us started. And whereas what you're proposing is to, have a portfolio of services, then you truly can be, people use the term solution incorrectly quite often because they really don't have a range of solutions. So, I like that.
Point.
Yeah,
good point. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. So listen, I think we need to address what's happening in the market right now because, a lot of businesses are hurting and a lot of recruitment businesses in particular are hurting badly. What do you think is the key to getting through this and, and being in a position that of strength at the end rather than, just kind of weathering the storm and then going back to do what you're doing before?
Okay, so we've done a number of different things. We put a trading update out to the stock market a couple of weeks ago, which updated everybody where we were. Clearly, the whole world's going through this giant, unprecedented crisis. It's touching everything that everybody does. And our industry is no different, and our clients are no different. So traditional business models that have withstood all sorts of different shocks in the past are now under huge pressure. They're being smashed up, right? You've got whole businesses which are completely revolutionizing themselves, and they're doing it at warp speed.
Yeah.
Okay. There was I was looking at a business the other day, an online business, and the CEO said to me, we've evolved more in the last 3 months than we thought we would within the next 3 years.
Right, exactly.
Okay?
Yeah.
So, these are truly unparalleled times. And I think this is a Darwinian moment, okay, for our industry and lots of other industries. And we need to step up as a business, as an industry, and help our clients through these very difficult times, okay? Now, some businesses, and I hear this anecdotally in our industry, some businesses are just sticking their head in the sand and think it'll all be over by Christmas. We can just go back to doing what we used to do. Forget it. There are other companies who are out there talking to clients about the same stuff that they were talking about a year ago, right? And clients don't necessarily need that. So because I go back to this point of us being relevant and having 5 different service lines, a lot of our clients won't necessarily want to hire a full-time employee, but they might want to hire some interim specialization. So a 6 or 9 or 12 or 3-month program. So how do I manage my change? How do I manage my people differently? So our interim business is performing very well.
Great.
All right. And, they've got a level of agility there that means the client's got an immediate problem. They need somebody in post within 5 to 7 working days. Mm-hmm. And our interim team will basically resolve that for them very quickly. So lots of stuff around change transformation. Obviously, financing is a big thing. Finance, HR is a big thing, because clearly we've got lots of people issues now that need to be resolved. So, so for those traditional search firms that are out there that didn't have some kind of interim offering, they're going to suffer. Okay. You've then got research and insight. So people are thinking now, what's it going to look like post-COVID? How can I structure? There are some firms out there that have furloughed staff or let staff go, and they cannot be seen to be actively recruiting or preparing for the future. So they work with us very discreetly, and we can help them build talent pools and talent pipelines using our research and insight team. And we can do this very discreetly, so that then when they do want to come to market, we don't have to do the plan and prep. We're already there, so we can just pull the trigger. So I think that's where we've shown our resilience, and I think that's why so far we've had a good crisis. Whereas some of the companies have struggled. But what makes me feel good about that is that we've helped our clients. We've stepped up, and just as they're having to be agile and creative and resilient, we are.
Awesome. Well, Mike, that makes total sense. And you're speaking from a great vantage point, having been in this industry for so long. What advice would you have, though, for smaller recruiting and staffing firms who don't have the depth or the resources of Norman Broadbent? And were ill prepared for this, crisis. We're maybe doing fine, 3 months ago, but are now having to reinvent themselves. What would your sort of action plan be?
They need to form strategic partnerships. It's as simple as that.
And what do you mean by that?
So, for example, if you're a traditional recruiter and you just do one thing, which is exec search or permanent recruitment, whatever you want to describe it as, then they should be looking to talk to a company perhaps that might be a specialist research house in talent and human capital. They should be looking to talk to an assessment business that does, for example, board evaluation or psychometric assessment, that kind of thing. If they're working at the more senior end, they should be asking themselves, can I develop a partnership with a mid-level firm? If they don't, for example, have a strong digital offering, but they're very good elsewhere, can they partner up with a business? So that's the kind of thing that I'd be doing.
Yeah.
Where we are now being approached by a number of smaller firms, and they're asking us, can we get into partnership with you? Mm-hmm. Can we work with you? That could be a merger. It could be we acquire them. And the way that we look at it is interesting firm, great brand. They only do one thing, but can we then bring our other service lines behind them? Mm-hmm. And either we white label them so they go out on their own brand, mm-hmm. or they cross sell us in. I think that will be that's what we're doing now. Okay. Mm-hmm. We've not signed anything. I'm not announcing anything, but certainly if I was running a small business, that's what I'd be doing.
Interesting. Mike, you may well get some inquiries after this goes out. What's your criteria for even wanting to enter into discussion with a firm who wants some kind of strategic partnership with Norman Broadbent?
So it would be in a Thrive sector or function. Mm-hmm. So obvious ones there: health services, life sciences, pharma, digital of some description, tech. They're all really interesting. Yeah. No noticeable overlap. Mm-hmm. And then it's all about the quality of the people that are in the business. Culturally, we are a very innovative and creative and entrepreneurial business. And what we don't want to do is go backwards by bringing in some sort of 1950s style recruiter. We want something a bit more interesting and progressive. So again, yeah, it will be around the people.
Okay, that makes sense. Great, interesting. You had mentioned in our previous correspondence that this turnaround at Norman Broadbent and your ability to continuing to trade through COVID, you've already touched on some of the keys there. But looking at managing your own team through this process, like you've spoken mainly to how you're helping clients and staying relevant externally. Another big challenge for recruiting firms is managing their own staff through this. And I guess the two big issues there are, number one, continuing to be productive when everyone is working remotely. And number two is keeping people engaged and motivated. How have you guys achieved that?
Okay, so I think there are lots of different ways of doing this. So on a fairly light level, so we're having this discussion on a Friday, it's noon. Every year we work to what's called Norman Broadbent Summertime, and that means that every Friday afternoon at 2:00 we close the offices. Okay? Mm-hmm. And we've been doing that for a couple of years, and that's to give people the opportunity to spend some real time with their family, with their friends, or just basically get some me time. All right. And it's always gone down really well. Now, even though we're in lockdown, we're still doing it. So today is the first day of the summer where people finish at 2:00. All right. Now, they can't do an awful lot where we are at the moment, but nonetheless, it gives them permission to switch off. Mm. And one of the big things that I've found about lockdown, and I don't know about you, but my working patterns have changed. So I work much later. I'm checking my emails at 10:00 in the morning, at 10:00 at night. Whereas before I used to compartmentalize work, office and home.
Yes.
So we have to give people permission to switch off. Okay. This is not a race. No one's being judged about the number of hours they're spending working or anything like that. Because that then leads into the issue of mental health.
Right.
All right. And no matter how resilient you are as an individual, there will be huge strains around you. Working from home, your home environment might not be right, homeschooling, kids, your partner might be on furlough or have lost their job, worries about the future, financials. So there's huge numbers of pressures now that people are under that you just wouldn't normally get. So we've got a team in our leadership consulting team, and they are professional coaches and psychologists. And I've taken one of them and I've said, all I want you to do is focus on our people. That's all he does. And people are getting individual one-on-one coaching. They're getting time to talk about any issues that they might have. It could be a professional, it could be personal. Even, sadly, we had to furlough 8 members of our team, which is not a lot, but there's still 8 human beings, yes. Right? And even they are benefiting from that service, okay? Because, we want to look after them as well, because when this whole thing starts to unravel and we start to come back into normality, we want everybody to come back in one piece. So, we've invested a lot of time and effort and energy to keep our people as match fit mentally as we possibly can. We're going through a big development program now. We haven't stopped that. So everybody in the company is being put through a series of assessments with our leadership consulting team. And that's all about finding out more about them finding more about themselves, so that we know that they'll be future fit, and as a business we'll be future fit.
Excellent. All right. Those are all great ideas. So you have the continuing with the culture and the Norman Broadbent summertime, early finish on a Friday. You've got ongoing learning and development and assessments, and that program is ongoing. And then thirdly, the coaching and sort of psychology offering that you would normally provide to clients, you're using internally for staff as well. Those are all great. Anything else?
Well, we were able to move into lockdown quite quickly. I'd, as you mentioned right at the beginning, I'd worked out in Asia. So I was in Hong Kong when the SARS epidemic hit Hong Kong. So I kind of had an inkling about what was going to come. Clearly nowhere near as bad as it is. But we went through in Hong Kong elements of social distancing, clients not wanting to meet face-to-face, that kind of stuff. So we did a lot of work to get all our tech right, to make sure everybody had the right kit, licenses, we got the right protocols in place. And we did that probably a couple of weeks before we went into the lockdown. So I think we moved into it quite seamlessly. Our people are very strong, resilient. They're very agile. That's what we look for. So I think they were able to move into it perhaps easier than some other folk might have done it. And also, we actually unlocked our offices 2.5 weeks ago, right?
Right.
So, and what all that was about was saying to people, things are, we're moving back into the new normal. It's a safe place for people to come and work. We were very conscious that people had been working from home. And as I said earlier, sometimes it's not a great environment to work from home. So what we're saying is, if you want a change, come to the office. If it's safe, come to the office. We've got car parking spaces for them. We've got bike racks for them. We've got everybody on this HMRC scheme now where you can buy a bike through the company. So if people want to buy a bike and cycle to the office, they can. So all those kind of things that we're doing, just to try and put a bit of normality into it. One of the other things I've been doing is as well, I've been buying a lot of wine. Okay.
Okay. Is this for personal consumption or? Well,
there is a bit of that. But, you need to let people know that you appreciate what they're doing. Right. And so, regular shipments, cases of wine are being sent to different people across the company because they've done a great job. You know, we sent flowers to all people who work in our support team. It's a little gesture, but I think it helps. You know, we had a wonderful hot weekend, a long weekend, I think, recently. So we made sure that some of the people who really, really contributed quite significantly, you know, they had a case of wine arrive on their doorstep in time for the weekend. You know, little things like that.
Mike, you used the word resilient a few times. And I mean, that's the whole reason I called the show The Resilient Recruiter, because I feel that is perhaps one of the critical competencies or you know, assets of a successful recruiter, is being able to bounce back from setbacks, disappointments, you know, difficulties, challenges. On that note, can we circle back to, a lot of my clients are entrepreneurs, sort of, you know, owners of SME recruiting firms and so on. Can we circle back to your sort of entrepreneurial beginnings and what do you think was the secret to your success? Because that's an unbelievable story of, you know, building up a business and then, you know, selling it to a PE firm and so on. What, you know, by the way, when is your book coming out, Mike? Your autobiography about your career?
Never.
Okay. Well, if were you to write one, what would be like your key moments in that journey that, reflecting back on, were kind of like the pivotal moments?
If I go right back to when I was a kid, okay, I come from the north of England. I come from a small village. My mum was a nurse. My father worked for the local mining company. We had a good upbringing, really great upbringing. My parents have got an amazing work ethic and really strong values around the importance of work, family, contribution, community, all those kind of good things. So far, so solid. And my aunt remarried, and she married a businessman. Mm-hmm. And he lived in Paris. He was hugely successful. And I remember the first time I ever left the UK was when I think I was 10 or 11. And I got taken to Paris for the summer to stay with my aunt and her new beau. And I just thought, wow, this is amazing. It was I experienced something I'd never experienced before, and that was the trappings of success. And that inspired me to want to go out and be like him. You know, obviously I wanted all the good bits of my parents that they'd instilled in me, but there was this whole new level. So that, I think that was the first thing. The second thing that's driven me on, and I've been involved in 6 or 7 turnarounds and sales of companies and startups that have gone on to sell out. It's about having a good idea. It's the resilience factor and just keeping going. You know, I sign off all my emails to the guys in our office at the bottom. Keep going, right? Because you've got to just keep going. Okay. But I've also, I think, been influenced by seeing how people have done things and thought, I don't like that, or I don't want to be like that. Mm-hmm. So I want to do something different. So not accepting the norm. And I remember when I first stepped out and set my first business up with James's backing, this lovely little search firm I was working for. You know, I used to get in at 8 and no one would be there. They might start drifting in at 9:30. They used to drink at lunchtime. You know, but believe it or not, they would bring down the drinks tray from the boardroom at 5 o'clock on the nail, and everybody have a drink. And I just thought, it's all great, lovely, but you know, it's not really taking us anywhere. And I think that drove me on to set that business up with James's backing. Fantastic.
You mentioned that resilience and keeping going. Can you tell me an example or situation from, you know, running your own business where things got hairy and you had to, there was a major challenge or roadblock that you had to overcome?
Yeah. So we went when we were in Hong Kong and SARS hit us. That was something that no one had ever seen before, and obviously Hong Kong was the beating heart of that SARS epidemic.
Mm.
And that was, we were a private company. It was pretty scary. We had some private equity backers. We moved very quickly in terms of cost control. So we did a lot of stuff around that. We didn't cut muscle. And basically, I brought the whole team together in our offices in Hong Kong, and we just talked it through about how we could work as a team. Huge amounts of transparency, and that kind of kept everybody going. And if I look at what we're doing now at Norman Broadbent, again, we bring the whole team together on either conference calls or on Zoom. We talk about where the business is. We talk about where we are against our targets and where we need to be. We talk about things like cash collection. There's just total openness and transparency. And I think that's what people need to be that's how they need to be operating now, leaders in business. Because you'll be surprised at how much people can take. And if you create a vacuum of information, people will fill it with the wrong stuff.
Mm.
So, our people understand where we are as a business, how we're tracking, and I think it gives them confidence that they know they're doing the right thing and they are helping the company.
Makes sense. Something you mentioned earlier about your, upbringing was your family instilling certain values. What are the values at Norman Broadbent that you look for? You look for a match when you're bringing people on board.
So it's about collaboration, the ability to work collegiately with colleagues. It's about putting the client first. A lot of people in our industry, and this is a lot to do with how people are compensated. I think are very they focus on self, and that's important, obviously. But we like people to think about themselves, our clients, their colleagues, the company. Because at the end of the day, we're all intertwined.
Mm-hmm.
Honesty is a big thing. That's a big thing. Being honest with colleagues. If you say you're going to do something, do it. If you haven't done it, at least put your hands up and say, I've not done it. So it's things like that are important to us.
The issue of collaboration that you mentioned, I think this can be quite a selfish pursuit. And there is the sort of mythos of the big biller, which if you're the principal, you're the primary fee earner of a small boutique or something, then that's awesome. You want to bill as much as possible. But how do you manage that at Norman Broadbent so that you're encouraging, high achievement, but not to the detriment of that working as a team?
Yeah, I think it's important that if you are, one of these rock star big producers, there's got to be a certain amount of humility about you. You've got to be humble. You've got to help other people come on. You've got to help your colleagues win business and be part of the team. That's what we look for. We won't have people in our business who are selfish and only in it for themselves. We just won't have them.
Yeah. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to say goodbye to someone, even though they were, a profitable contributor?
In my career, yes, I have.
Yeah.
And I didn't lose any sleep over it.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, if your business is just a collection of individuals, it's not a sustainable business.
Mm-hmm.
All right? Because selfish people join you and selfish people will leave you. What you need is a team that works together, because that builds critical mass. It's sustainable. It's resilient, to keep coming back to this word, and it's better for the client. So, we have an ethos in our business that we have the best people in the room. Okay, so when you go and see a client, you take the right person alongside you, and that's all about adding enough value to the client and making sure that the client comes out of it satisfied. There's a lot of firms where all the egos get in the way and the wrong people get in the room and the client's not satisfied, and commercially the business doesn't win.
Absolutely. Great point. One final question then, Mike, is if you could go back to your younger self at a critical point, maybe where you tried something that didn't work out, or you made a mistake in retrospect, what you realized was a mistake, what advice would you give to that younger entrepreneur?
Don't worry about it.
Okay. Can you elaborate on that?
So some people get very hung up about being seen to have made a mistake. All right. And you've just got to pick yourself up, brush yourself down, and get back on with it. Lots of successful people have made lots of mistakes. You got to learn from them, and you just got to move on. All right, and don't be afraid to say to the people that work with you or for you, "I got that one wrong, guys. I'm sorry."
Yeah, that's interesting. That's really important. A lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of business owners have trouble with that because they want to seem infallible or sort of, not have people question, or challenge the decision making or anything like that. So
that comes back down to that point I made earlier about honesty. All right, you've got to be honest with yourself, and you've got to be honest with the people that are around you. Now, it could be a client, it could be an investor, it could be a colleague. If you get it wrong, just say, "Yeah, I got that one wrong. How do we fix it?"
Great. All right. This has been brilliant, Mike. Listen, if people want to find out more about Norman Broadbent and possibly, joining you as a team member, what is the best way for them to find out more?
Go to our website, normanbroadbent.com, and email me.
Okay.
And I'll call you.
All right. Fantastic. Mike, thank you for your time today. It's been really, really awesome. Thank you.
All right. Keep going.
Okay, will do. That's going to be one of my new expressions. I'll borrow that one. Thanks a lot, Mike. Have a good weekend.
Okay, bye-bye.